Welcome back to lecture number 8, topic 2.1, Contextualizing Period 2. This lecture will serve as background for everything that happens between 1607 to 1754. The learning objective says, explain the context for the colonization of North America from 1607 to 1754. The first key concept is Europeans develop a variety of colonization and migration patterns influenced by different imperial goals, cultures, and the various North American environments where they settled, and they competed with each other and American Indians for resources. We're going to go through each European power that was in the New World individually, starting with Spain. Here's some continuity from the historical period. The Spanish were motivated by gold, God, and glory. The migration patterns reflected their goals and settlements, missionary activities, and economic activities that they focused on. Migrations were dominated by single men, and when they settled, they intermarried with natives, which led to a very complex system of class. The French are going to settle down in their first permanent settlement of Quebec in 1608. They claim some of the largest amounts of territory in the New World with one of the smallest numbers of settlers. They rivaled Spain, and they will start their exploration through the St. Lawrence Seaway in the Great Lakes. They'll hop over on land and reach the Mississippi River. They'll make their way all the way down the Mississippi, eventually reaching modern-day New Orleans. The economic activity that they focus on is the beaver fur trade. The French fur traders in the New World were called coureurs de bois. That translates to runners of the woods. This hints at where they spent most of their time, but it's worth emphasizing that they were primarily traders. They traded with Native Americans who did most of the trapping and tanning of the pelts. This requires the French to maintain friendly relations with native tribes with whom they come into contact with. While beaver fur was the most popular traded commodity, there were other animal furs like badgers and mongoose that would be used to make gloves, hats, and other fashionable items. The French, similar to the Spanish, will go as far as settling down and intermarrying with natives. The Dutch will settle down in modern-day New York. At the time, they called it New Netherlands. They traveled up the Hudson River Valley and settled the surrounding areas, but overall, they'll have fewer Dutch people migrate to the New World. Even though they were there for the same reasons as the French, to engage in the fur trade, they limit their settlements to the area around the Hudson River and usually befriend native groups that were rivals of French Indian allies. The Dutch create an incentive program that grants land around the Hudson River called patroonships that will have mixed success. They do absorb the Swedish exploration in North America in 1655, but later they're going to be absorbed themselves by the English in 1664. On the screen there is a map of their settlement, but also the seal of New Amsterdam, the city we now call New York City, with a beaver at the center to emphasize their fur trading goals. The document with the missing corner is actually the deed of sale for the island of Manhattan. The island of Manhattan was exchanged between the Dutch and Native Americans for something that would be roughly around $1,000 today. Finally, the British will have great variety in their migration patterns. There is a mix of single males and family units migrating depending on the region where they settle. In New England, there was a greater proportion of family units, fewer in the middle colonies and fewer still in the plantation southern colonies. The majority of the colonies were based in agriculture after the earliest colonists perished looking for gold deposits. Cash crops like tobacco were profitable in the south, while food crops like wheat and other cereal crops were more common in the middle colonies. In New England, they practiced shipbuilding because of the abundance of natural harbors and the scarcity of arable land. Since most British colonists were there with the intention of farming the land, they often had a more antagonistic relationship with the native populations over the land. In Jamestown, the first permanent settlement, a colonial leader, John Smith, yes, that John Smith, gets into an altercation with the nearby Powhatan tribe. This is where Pocahontas, the daughter of the chief Powhatan, symbolically steps in between her father and John Smith and saves him from being killed. The next key concept is Spanish, French, Dutch, and British colonizers had different economic and imperial goals involving land and labor that shaped the social and political development of their colonies, as well as their relationship with native populations. We'll go through each European power and expand on the goals as before. The imperial goals of the Spanish are going to affect the character of the colonies as they're continuing to try and get mineral resources. They will continue to use enslaved labor in mines and sugarcane plantations. As for their religious conversion attempts, they're going to establish the mission system in full during this historical period. The mission system was established up the coast of California from San Diego as far north as the San Francisco Bay Area. Since the French were there to trade pelts with natives, they end up decimating the beaver populations in what is now the Midwest and Northeast. Their continued interaction and trade with Native Americans introduces Native Americans to alcohol and diseases, which will negatively impact native populations. Before native tribes came together in solidarity against the practice in the early 18th century, French and British traders would use shots of alcohol as currency to trade for pelts from natives. The Dutch had more than just their colonies in North America. They had colonies in South America and what is now Indonesia. Because of those lucrative ventures in the East Indies and Brazil, they didn't really pay too much attention to their colonies in North America when the English took over the Dutch colonies in New Amsterdam and the New Netherlands. They didn't really miss them. As far as what it was like in New Amsterdam under the Dutch control, it was run like a company town. They were there to make money, and so therefore the self-government and freedoms that people will come to expect in British North America are absent. The Dutch were also some of the first Europeans in North America to use African enslaved labor to build some of the infrastructure of the city. Relations with natives were mixed. They had to have American Indian allies for their fur trading to be profitable, but you can see from the map of the island of Manhattan that they built fortifications to protect from native attacks. The original Wall's Path that protected the city is actually the foundation for what is Wall Street in New York City today. Wall Street got its name from the wall that the Dutch built to protect themselves from native attacks. The British came to North America for a diverse amount of different purposes. As land was a primary motivation for migrating, land issues became very important. Squatters who claim a piece of land for themselves by simply settling on it without any legal claim, especially in North Carolina, tried to get legitimacy for the land that they squatted on. That led to issues with Native Americans that previously occupied that land. Since religious freedom was also a motivation for migration, there will be varying degrees of religious freedom implemented in each colony. Colonies like Pennsylvania and Maryland that were settled by Quakers and Catholics respectively attempted to attract a diverse group of people from Europe and allowed the practice of various religions. The image of a law of Maryland concerning religion is the Maryland Acts of Toleration that was passed in order to protect Catholics in the colony. Quakers, led by William Penn in Pennsylvania, will also be more accommodating to various groups, including natives. In the painting on the screen, he's seen exchanging goods with Native Americans for the purchase of the territory of Pennsylvania, which according to the Crown had already been granted to Penn. The New England colonies also had the goal of settlements to escape religious persecution. Separatists and Puritans that were trying to either separate completely from the Church of England or purify the Church of England and make it less like the Catholic Church established various colonies in New England. Ironically, are more intolerant of other religions and established a government that is dominated exclusively by congregation members. The relationship with natives will also be poor with various wars fought in New England through the 17th century. Let's go on to the next key concept about the various English colonies. In the 17th century, early British colonies developed along the Atlantic coast with regional differences that reflected various environmental, economic, cultural, and demographic factors. The three groups of colonies were the Chesapeake and the Southern colonies, the Middle colonies, and then the New England colonies. The Chesapeake colonies is where Jamestown was, the first permanent British settlement. The first attempt at British settlement was also in this region. That was the failed Roanoke colony in the 1500s. The Chesapeake colonies had the lowest life expectancy out of all of the other colonies, partly due to the geography. It was a very swampy area which yielded diseases like dysentery and malaria. It decimated the population of the English settlers early on, and it wasn't until the 1700s that people became accustomed to the living conditions. Tobacco growers dominated the area after John Rolfe developed a new strand of the tobacco plant that grew plentifully in the area. Indentured servants were the main source of labor, but later switched to rely primarily on enslaved labor due to Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, and an insurrection by poor backcountry farmers, some of which were former indentured servants. The Middle colonies, which included New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, were also heavily focused on agriculture, but they were planting mostly cereal crops. Therefore, they became known as the breadbasket of the 13 colonies, because they were really growing the most amount of food. They were more diverse due to the old Dutch settlements in New York and William Penn's recruitment for people to come to his new colony from all over Europe. He incentivized people by giving them healthy amounts of land, which attracted large numbers of Germans. The Pennsylvania Dutch are actually the Pennsylvania Deutsch, or Pennsylvanian Germans. Think Dwight Schrute if you're a fan of The Office. The New England colonies had less arable land or soil suitable for farming as there was in the Middle colonies and the plantation colonies. The soil was rockier and the growing seasons were shorter due to the colder winters. However, because of the natural harbors that were along the coast of New England, shipbuilding and timber became the main industries. The Puritans and the Separatists were the ones that mostly lived in New England, so their religious lifestyle influenced patterns of living. They created a church or a congregational hall in every town that was laid out, with people living closer together than people did in the middle colonies or in the southern colonies. There were fewer enslaved Africans also because there was no necessity for it in the agriculture industry. It wouldn't have been profitable for them to purchase enslaved labor when their farm operations were not as large or as profitable as the middle or the southern colonies. The next key concept is competition over resources between European rivals and American Indians encouraged industry and trade and led to conflict in the Americas. Throughout the 13 colonies, there were conflicts with Native Americans, primarily over land. In New England, colonists engaged in the Pequot War in 1637, in which the Pequots were expelled from their land in New England. Attacks that the Puritans led turned into massacres in which they killed women and children. They burned entire villages as retribution for attacks and as a way to expel them from their territory. In 1657, New England colonists are in conflict with natives again, this time led by Metacom called King Philip's by the Puritans. This was the last attempt to end English expansion. Metacom was able to get a multi-tribal alliance to combat British expansion, but they failed. In this conflict, the Pequot actually sided with the Puritans. This emphasizes the point that native groups in the Americas were not monolithic. They were not all the same. They operated under their own complex alliances and rivalries that sometimes aligned with European powers to combat their traditional rivals. Metacom was captured, he's beheaded, and his head is put on a stake as a warning to other native groups in the town of Plymouth. As for the British colonies in the Chesapeake, we've covered the Anglo-Powhatan Wars in the early 1600s around the area of Jamestown. They were caused by settlers trying to continue to expand further into Native American land to plant more tobacco. Eventually, the Powhatan are forced to give up more territory to the encroaching tobacco plantations. The next key concept, the British colonies participated in political, social, cultural, and economic exchanges with Great Britain that encouraged both stronger bonds with Britain and resistance to Britain's control. This key concept focuses on the changing relationship between Britain and its colonies. We'll talk about all the different events that happen that will make the relationship stronger, and then what will make it weaker that will eventually lead us to the Revolution in 1776. The Navigation Acts in 1651 were prompted by the Anglo-Dutch Wars. England went to war with the Dutch, and in order to try and hurt the Dutch Empire while simultaneously getting the most benefit from their colonies, England passes the Navigation Acts. They prohibited the colonies from trading with the Dutch or transporting British goods on Dutch ships. This is part of the larger mercantilist system in which the mother country should benefit wholly from its colonies. But through periods of salutary neglect, the enforcement of the Navigation Acts is often lax. There's quite a lot of smuggling of British goods on non-British ships. Through this period, there will also be various realignments of colonial governments over time. There will be periods in which British monarchs exert more control over the colonies like they did over the Dominion of New England, in which they revoke the charters of all New England colonies and ruled it as one big colony. Then there are other periods, especially the 1700s, in which they just let the colonies govern themselves. Colonial legislatures then become accustomed to having home rule and having dominion over their own affairs. The next key concept is transatlantic commercial, religious, philosophical, and political exchanges led residents of the British colonies to evolve in the political and cultural attitudes as they became increasingly tied to Britain and one another. There will be one major movement in this period that brings colonists together through the common experience of a Protestant revival movement called the Great Awakening. There are two people that you should associate with it. The first is Jonathan Edwards. He was from the British colonies, and his sermon, Sinners at the Hands of an Angry God, became widely read across the colonies. The second was George Whitefield, who was from England and traveled across every colony preaching. Due to his movement across the colonies, the Great Awakening became the first shared movement amongst all the British colonies, and it led to a growing shared identity between the colonists. The final key concept, like other European empires of the Americas that participated in the Atlantic slave trade, the English colonies developed a system of slavery that reflected the specific economic, demographic, and geographic characteristics of those colonies. This is to say that slave labor took hold in the British colonies, especially in the colonies that participated in agriculture. Tobacco was the main cash crop grown in the Chesapeake, and it didn't require technical knowledge in growing it. However, rice was the main crop in the Carolinas, so plantation owners looked for enslaved people that had experience growing rice in Africa. It will lead to an increase in demand for enslaved labor, and as they arrive in the British colonies, they begin to outnumber the white settlers. In order to maintain supremacy in the colonies and keep the enslaved labor in bondage, colonial legislatures enacted slave codes that defined slavery in the most restrictive terms. It devalued enslaved people's lives by giving impunity to enslavers in the event of an enslaved person's death. It restricted their movement by instituting a pass system and punished anyone who was thought to be helping the enslaved person's condition. Alright, finally here is your recap. Each European exploration and colonization effort was unique, so you need to be able to differentiate what was unique about each one. The British colonies developed into 3 distinct groups. That's the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern plantation colonies. Relations with natives varied with each European power depending on the economic goals. Britain arguably had the worst relationship with them, while some like the French and the Spanish intermarried with them. Britain's relationship with its colonies will change over the 17th and 18th century, and finally, British colonies will begin to utilize enslaved African labor. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, you can click on the video link on the screen, and if you are looking for more practice to help you on the AP exam, you can visit APUSHslides.com. I wish you the very best in all of your studying and look forward to seeing you back on the next lecture.